Aqui está dizendo que tem 7.
Marcelo, a opção ainda não aparece.
É que eu acabei de entrar, professor. Eu vou colocar ele aqui, só um segundinho.
Ah, tá, ok. Então, não, tá tudo... Não tem problema a gente ter voltado, né?
Não, não. Só aguardando agora. Eu preciso só aguardar o Álvaro entrar. E aí a gente já coloca.
Professor Giuseppe and just a second, because they are putting available the simultaneous translation option here for our participants. So that is why we are just taking a second to start. I'm sorry for the delay.
No problem.
Prontinho, a interpretação já está funcionando.
Ok. And, Marcelo, nós podemos já começar? O Álvaro já está?
Acredito que sim, professor. Só vamos aguardar a confirmação dele. Ele precisa clicar no OK. Assim que ele clicar, a gente já libera aqui.
Tá, você me avisa?
Aviso sim.
Ok.
Boa tarde a todos.
Boa tarde.
Oi, eu sou o Álvaro, o intérprete de vocês hoje nessa sessão.
Ok. Thank you, Álvaro. Álvaro, you'll be the interpreter today. And can I start, Álvaro?
Pode sim, senhora. Vou habilitar aqui, aí eu perco comunicação com você, tá?
Ok, ok. Thank you.
Pode iniciar, professora. Muito obrigado.
Thank you. Obrigada, Marcelo. Deixa eu só modificar aqui. Okay. Welcome everyone to the CIGAR Forum. The CIGAR, Comparative International Governmental Accounting Research Network, has the leading role in public sector accounting research. It is an honor to host Professors Stafford and Giuseppe Grossi here to discuss the very topical subject of implementing and using public sector reporting and international perspective. Unfortunately, Professor Susana Jorge is not able to join us today. She has asked me to apologize for that. Since 2018, when Professor Susana Jorge participated in the USP conference as a keynote speaker, she has given invaluable contribution for Brazilian research, taking part in some activities, including sharing with me the responsibility for the discipline research seminar in IPS. She really has inspired us. Now, I would like to take a moment to introduce our guests. Professor Giuseppe Grossi is Vice Chair of the Executive Board of the CIGAR. He has a PhD and is a research professor in accounting at North University, Norway, and part-time professor at the Kristianstad University in Sweden and Komiskin University in Poland. Professor Giuseppe's diverse research focuses on governmental accounts, hybrid forms of governance, and performance of knowledge-intensive public organizations, state-owned enterprise, and smart cities. He has extensive experience in conducting country and comparative studies with scholars from different disciplines. He collaborates as an expert with national and local governments, Supreme Audit institutions, and the European Court of Auditors. Professor Giuseppe's publications appear in leading accounting and public management journals. He is on the editorial board and has been guest editor of several special issues in public management and in the interdisciplinary accounting journals. He is editor-in-chief of the Journal of Public Budgeting, Accounting, and Financial Management. Professor Anne Stafford is a member of the Executive Board of the CIGAR. She is a professor of accounts at Alliance Manchester Business School, University of Manchester, UK. She is a member of the ACCA's Global Forum for the Public Sector and a committee member of the BAFA, British Accounting and Finance Association, a special interest group for public services and charities. Her research interests include financial analysis of public policy, particularly in relation to public-private partnerships, public sector corporate governance and accountability, and disciplinary perspectives on the relationship between professional development and academic knowledge in accounting. Her work has been cited in submissions to governments, the OECD, and the World Bank. I would like to give information about this session. The session is organized as follows. First, Professor Stafford and will provide information about the CIGAR. Then Professor Grossi will give his speech entitled Implementation of the International Public Sector Accounting Standards in Europe, Variations on a Global Scene. And finally, we have some time for questions and answers, moderated by Professor Stafford. The participants have two options to ask questions. First, forward your question in English via the chat here on Zoom, or second, use the hands up icon on Zoom and, when invited, open the audio and ask your question, preferably in English. Please, Professor Stafford, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Varela. I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the CIGAR board for this kind invitation to participate in the USP 2021 Accounting Congress. It's a real honor to us to be invited to hold this panel session. We're very pleased to be here, so thank you for that. We are just extremely sorry that our chair, Professor Susana Jorge, is unable to be with us today. It is a real disappointment because obviously she has been associated with our CIGAR network for a very, very long time, much longer than either Giuseppe or myself. So I will attempt to tell you about the CIGAR network but sadly I don't have the full range of experience that my colleague Professor Jorge could have brought to this. I'm going to share a few slides, so I will start doing that now. So one moment. It's not, I apologize, it's not letting me share. There we go. I've gone too far now. Let me go back. There we go. So thank you and welcome everybody to this session. Obviously, we are we very much look forward to hearing any questions that you might have about the CIGAR network, as well as Giuseppe's presentation shortly. So I thought I would just share a few words about who we are in the CIGAR network. As Professor Varela kindly introduced us, our name is the CIGAR network. That it stands for Comparative International Governmental Accounting Research Network. And we would regard ourselves as quite a long-established international network. The first meetings took place in 1987. Since then, we have expanded what we do and how we do things. So originally, there was a small group of interested academics, and our three founders were James Chan from the University of Illinois in Chicago, Professor Rowan Jones from the University of Birmingham in the UK, and Professor Klaus Luder from the University of Speyer in Germany. But our current chair, Susana Jorge, became involved with the network after only a few years of its existence. And we have therefore now been running for about 30 years in total. We're currently changing the way that the network is organized. We think we probably have around about 600 members who interact with us in some way. And these members are now spread across all the world. After being quite heavily dominated by Europe for a number of years, more recently we have seen our network spreading particularly to the Far East and to the Asia Pacific region. And we very much welcome this opportunity to share with you in South America. We also reach many thousands of people through our quarterly newsletter, and I'll talk more at the end about how you can easily sign up to become a member of our network at no cost to you. So who are we within our network? Well, we include experts in public sector and governmental accounting from across a range of disciplines. So we have academics in our network, but we also interact very regularly with practitioners, and we have a number of practitioner members as well. Plus, we interact closely with many government officials, some of whom are members of our network. And our members are frequently called upon to contribute to public discussion about future directions for governmental accounting policy, either on a national or an international basis. And we're constantly seeking to strengthen our links with other organizations across the world. We've recently, as I've said, had a number of governance changes. We currently have an executive board with 6 members in total, and we also have oversight from a very strong and experienced advisory board. What do we do? I've only got a few minutes to talk about this, so very simply, our mission is to promote and stimulate discussion and research on public sector and comparative governmental accounting. So a very broad remit, and we undertake that in a range of different ways. So we have biennial conferences. Due to the pandemic, last month we held a virtual conference based out of Amsterdam, but attended by delegates from across the world. And obviously, because it was a virtual event, we were pleased to be able to welcome a wider range of attendees than normal. And this has obviously been one of the benefits of going virtual, hasn't it? In that people who can't normally travel across the world had the opportunity to come together for some very stimulating debate and interaction on broad themes across public sector and governmental accounting, including, of course, special themes such as the impact of COVID on what we are currently doing. We also hold, in the year that we don't have a conference, we hold a smaller workshop event, usually on a specific theme. So last year, our theme was looking at public sector auditing. Again, this had to be a virtual event. And again, this was a really well attended and very stimulating event with a lot of really high quality debate on the issues. As part of our workshop last year, we actually held this as a joint event with IPSASB and an IPSASB research forum, which followed on after our own workshop event. And we have in recent years been able to strengthen our links with IPSASB, and we have now these regular research forums with IPSASB, and we also have people who contribute to calls for consultation and discussion on output from IPSASB. We also are interested in the future of the network, and every year we hold a doctoral colloquium, and which doctoral students from around the world are encouraged to go along to and receive much richer input from the faculty who are available for discussion and debate on doctoral matters. We disseminate our work regularly via our quarterly newsletter that keeps everybody up to date in terms of what we are doing as a network, what events we're holding, and also other relevant information from other organizations or groups that we are linked with or in touch with in any way. And we also publish opinion pieces in that quarterly newsletter that we think relate to topical issues. We have further publishing opportunities, which I'll just run through very briefly on my next slide. So we have over time produced a number of books on international comparative studies. These have included looking at budgeting, looking at accounting reforms, and looking at public sector accounting, for example, implementation of IPSASB and related financial reporting matters. We frequently have links to special issues of journals, so financial accountability and management, for example. More recently, we have improved our links with the Journal of Public Budgeting, Accounting and Financial Management, which of course is edited by my friend and colleague, Giuseppe Grossi. And from 2021, we have entered into an arrangement with Public Money and Management to produce an annual special issue with them of papers that are of relevance and interest to the CIGAR network. And our first publication is coming out next month, August 2021, as part of this special link. you may well have further questions to ask about the CIGAR network. We're very happy to take your questions at the end. What I would urge you to do, if you are at all interested in our work, is to visit our website and register with us as a member. It's completely free of charge, so there is no commitment by you. If you register with us as a member, you will then start to receive our newsletter and keep up to date with our activities and with other activities that you may find to be of interest. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you about the CIGAR network. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Stafford, for your very informative and engaged words. The CIGAR has an essential role in public sector accounting research, and it's so important to interact with this group. Thank you very much. Please, Professor Grossi, it is your turn.
Thank you very much, Patrícia, Varela, and Mayara Sasso to organize this forum, and of course, thank you also to Susana Jorge to create this important link for CIGAR with this prestigious university in Brazil. And a part of this acknowledgement, I would like to say that I am very honored to have this opportunity to speak in front of this audience. I know that there is a long history of the University of São Paulo in accounting, and this history is some way connected with Italian accounting tradition. This is my home country, and I'm very happy to see some old friends, virtual friends. I see Fabricio's there, very nice to see you. But I hope also new friends, and I think that is very important that CIGAR is represented here. I would like to present now one paper that we just concluded with Tobias Polzer, and you can download the paper. There is a link where you can download the paper, is in open access. We just concluded this paper with Tobias and Christoph Reichard a few months ago, but we presented this paper earlier in different conferences, but we still have a project. It's not concluded project, even if the paper is already published, because we would like to extend this comparative study also in other European countries and also non-European countries. So let me say something about the history of this paper. First of all, why we decided to study IPSAS implementation in Europe, and why we think that this topic is relevant for us, not just in accounting, but also in other disciplines. And this morning, I was really happy to listen Jan Karuters. He was presenting the IPSAS-B strategy, and he was mentioning several times standard. And we know, and there was a question, very nice question from one person of the audience, maybe Mayara, and she asked, and what's about comparability? And we started this paper just on this idea. Okay, we have a global set of standards, but unfortunately, we are failing to reach this comparability. It was the first question to him this morning. And each time that we discuss about standard, at the end, we discover that we are not able to find only one solution, and suddenly a further solution will appear. And you will see in this paper that we are discussing about competing standards, And the competition between IPSAS is not just with the national standard, because in Europe, you will see we have a set of different national standards, but is also with IFRS and is also with, I will introduce you later, EPSAS, European Public Sector Accounting Standard, because there is a debate at European level. So let me say the starting point of our project, let me say 4 or 5 years ago, it was the issue of standardization. And our main focus was why government, they are still adopting diverging strategy, and they are moving from full adoption. You have seen this morning that only 4 countries in the world, they are fully adopting IPSAS, but the majority, they are adapting IPSAS in different way, with national standard, with national legislation. And there are also countries that they are not adopting IPSAS. And I will show you in Europe, we have some countries that they are not adopting IPSAS, let me say UK and Sweden, but they are really consistent with IPSAS. So this is our more or less starting point. We know from previous accounting literature a lot of motivation, and I am sure that you know very well this model is coming by Nobbs and Parker. And we need harmonization for comparability, for reliability, and for accountability for different purposes. And we have also pressure from World Bank, IMF, and also the European Union to be more convergent towards international accounting standard, global standards. So we have a lot of EU projects that they are moving in these directions. But at the same time, we know that there are some, let's call it resistance, but also some problem to conciliate comparability between countries. And this is an important issue, not just in the private, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. And tomorrow we will discuss at AAA, American Accounting Association, similar problem in non-profit and charities. So I see that the problem, they are more or less the same, but we have this variation of the team. So that's why you can see in the paper, we are discussing about variation from full adoption to adaptation, specific selection, or non-adoption of standard. And we have seen that there is a lack of studies dealing with standardization process in the public sector. So the majority of the studies in accounting, they are dealing with private sector accounting regulation, but there are less studies on public sector. Of course, in the CIGAR community, as Anne told you, we have done a lot of edited book, special issue. It's very difficult to remember all the special issue that we have done in CIGAR, because it's a huge number of special issue dealing with public sector, but our focus here is on standardization, and I will show you quickly our 2 research questions. The first question is about the level of conformity of national accounting regulation with IPSAS. Of course, we are talking about European countries. And what are the reasons of various actors in 9 European countries for deviating from IPSAS or refusing to adopt IPSAS at all? So because we have some countries that they are refusing. And let me say that, and after I will tell you why we selected these 9 countries. So we have Austria, we have Estonia, Iceland, France, Poland, Sweden, Switzerland, UK. Let me say Austria, Switzerland, and France, continental country. We have 2 Nordic countries, Sweden and Iceland. We have 2 former Soviet countries, Estonia and Poland. And we have 1 Anglo-Saxon country, of course, UK. And we are focused also on the role of competing standards. And as you know, UK is adopting IFRS in the public sector, and this is quite well known. So that's why we discuss about the issue of competing standard. Very quickly on the literature review that we have done in the first part of the paper. And we know that there is a plethora of advantages to have harmonization also in the public sector. But we have seen in the literature a diversity of responses, diverging responses to convergence. And this morning, I was very interested to listen Jan Karuters. He was showing us the list of countries that they are adopting IPSAS, but we have seen that only few countries they are fully adopting. And these are developing countries, emerging economies, and he was also focusing on international organization. For example, the EU as institution is using IPSAS. So the EU institutions and the EU agencies, they are consolidated according to IPSAS, but the EU member states, they are not all of them using IPSAS. So this is, let me say, very important to say that the EU institution is using IPSAS, but not EU countries. That's quite difficult to explain, but hopefully it's clear. So our focus is not on the advantages of IPSAS because they are very well known, but on the reason for deviation from IPSAS. And as you can see later on, there is a plethora of reasons. In this part of the paper, we created a taxonomy of reason for deviation. So this is part of the literature on IPSAS. Inadequate for public sector accounting, issue of publicness, lack of specificity of the existing accounting standard. But we also, I think that we should recognize that the new IPSAS board is more focused on the public sector than the previous one. So I think that there is a sort of trend to be more aware about the specific characteristics. We have deviation that they are necessary because sometimes IPSAS, they are not covering all the accounting issue. And here we have 3 examples: social benefits, pension provision, and heritage assets. Even if we know that IPSAS-B is working on this issue and soon we will have standards. We have conflict between IPSAS and national accounting standards. Why? Because some of these countries, they have different accounting tradition. And I am sure that also in Brazil, I was several times in Brazil. I was in Brasilia to the Ministério de Fazenda a few years ago discussing about IPSAS. I was in Rio de Janeiro, and I hope to come physically in São Paulo because I am sure that there are interesting people to meet there. And I am sure that you have similar problem in Brazil because you have an accounting tradition that is not fully on fair value. And it was quite clear also this morning with Jan Karuters that several countries, they are struggling with the introduction of IPSAS. And this is another important problem. The dual moving targets, not all countries, they have the same speed of IPSAS-B because IPSAS-B already approved several standards. If I'm not wrong, Patrícia, now they are 42. Maybe you will have something new in the next days. I don't know, but not all these standards, they are also approved by different countries. So that's why we have this dual moving target. We have some problem in terms of incentives or pressure to adopt IPSAS. I remember that Iceland, for example, that is included in our sample of country, they had a big financial crisis a few years ago, and World Bank supported, and also IMF supported Iceland, but it was a condition to receive, let's say, financial support by World Bank and IMF. But not all EU countries, they have the same incentives. IPSAS adoption is costly. This is quite clear. We have a set of answers in different countries, also in rich countries like Sweden. They are complaining because the transition to IPSAS is very costly, not just in terms of IT system, but also in terms of human resource management. So I will show you quickly our conceptual framework. Let me say that Tobias Polzer, my colleague and co-author, is an accounting scholar nowadays, but he has, let me say, organizational theory background. So we built together this conceptual framework based on two main concepts. One concept is standardization, and another concept is more from institutional theory and is connected with practice variation from Lounsbury. Standardization is connected to isomorphism, coercive, normative, and also mimetic pressure behind the standard. And we are considering the literature, let me say, the Scandinavian institutionalism, Brunson, that is discussing about a world of standards. And there is a very nice book of Brunson with this title, World of Standards, but there are no chapters in this book on accounting. They are about different standards in quality management. There are standards in healthcare, standard in different issues, but they are not discussing about accounting. So we were, in a way, motivated to study standardization in the accounting context, because we are seeing now a proliferation of global standards and those also local standards. And we see often decoupling, because a lot of governments, they are in a way announcing accounting innovation, but they are not really implementing, or they are not really using. And I'm very sorry that Susana is not with us, because our speech, they were in a way coordinated. And my idea was to discuss about implementation and standardization. And Susana was ready to talk about the use of financial information, accounting information. But anyway, I'm sure that you will listen again, Susana. Our conceptual framework is based on the idea of deviation. Why deviation? Because there are differences in the material content between the issue standard and the translation can be observed in practice. And we have seen in our study, and you can find in the paper, a table where you will see all the material differences. I know that I have a sort of time limit, and I will show you just few, we call it deviation in the paper, and also the reasons of this deviation. And of course, implementers of standards, that's our, let me say, hypothesis. They can react to standard in different ways. And what are the possible ways? This is our theoretical model. And you can see that we are introducing the concept of practice variation at the national level. And we introduce this concept of partial adoption of IPSAS and adaptation of certain standard. And we will see the differences between these two concepts. But we know that there are also a few countries that they are adopting in a full way IPSAS, but they are very few, even if Jan Carruthers is very optimistic in his forecast. And there are also countries that they are not implementing IPSAS at all. And this is also another problem because we have countries that they are in a way refusing. And why they are refusing? This is more or less our framework. Let me go quickly. I just checked the time, but please, Patrícia and Anne, stop me. I think that I still have some. Can you tell me?
Yes, you have 35 minutes.
5 minutes?
35. Sorry, 25.
25 minutes, 25,
yes,
because I'm just in the middle.
Yes,
so
yes.
So let me say that we studied countries where there is a discussion about IPSAS, but within this country, there is also UK, that they are adopting IFRS, but in a way they are also consistent with the IPSAS. The level of maturity of UK is very, very high, but they have different administrative and accounting tradition, especially Austria, France, Switzerland. They have a continental tradition, and we have a lot of obstacles in these countries to implement IPSAS. We were using multiple sources, legislation, handbooks, and manuals, and we made 28 interviews with the country expert with different position in the country, politician, financial management, financial managers, auditors, professionals, accounting professionals, and also academic. And we created a sort of vignette, but they were not included in the paper because at the end, the paper was more than 20,000 words. It was almost a book. And the editors, they told us, please, I know that you want to put everything here. So we have the vignette of this paper, and the vignette, they are related to each country, but they oblige us to reduce the paper. I think that now the paper is more or less 12,000 words, but it was more than 20,000 words. You know, this is a problem to write this long comparative paper. So let me go to the countries. Here you can see the big differences. Personally, I was dealing with 2 countries. I was advisor of Estonia in moving to IPSAS a few years ago. I had a PhD student in Estonia, and I was supporting Estonia in the transition to IPSAS. It was a great pleasure because they were fast moving from a post-Soviet, from a Soviet country to a very modern country. Nowadays, they are on top, not just on IPSAS, but also on digitalization, for example. They are really, really good country. And I was also following Poland because I have some PhD student there, another post-socialist state. And of course, I made all the interviews in Sweden. So we are 3 authors, 9 countries. So we divided the country. Christoph was taking care of Austria and, if I'm not wrong, France and Switzerland. And Tobias, he was dealing with Iceland because he wanted to fly to Reykjavik, a fantastic place. And also UK, because he was working there. And I think that the last one should be Iceland and UK. I think Iceland and UK, yes. Let me say here, we have some results. And as you can see, all these countries, they are in a way introduced, they have different accounting tradition. As you can see in the United Kingdom, they are using IFRS, but this is very high compliant with IPSAS. Switzerland is a very advanced country, and I am sure that Switzerland in these 9 countries is one of the most advanced country in terms of IPSAS implementation. And we have Estonia, as I told you, they are very fast moving. And in Sweden, they are not officially considering IPSAS, but national Swedish standard, they are very conform to IPSAS. So let me say something about the way of implementing the standard, because this morning the discussion was also on the way of implementing standards. And as you can see, the continental countries, Austria, Switzerland, and France, they were implementing IPSAS through national legislation. Instead, Estonia, Iceland, they were creating national standards. And as you can also see that in these countries, there are not national standard setter in Austria and Switzerland. Instead, Estonia, Poland, Sweden, there are specific standard setter. It's very peculiar that Estonia and Poland, they have the same standard setter for public and private sector. So they have a sort of sector neutrality. And this is quite similar with the UK, even if the standardization process in the UK is done at the Treasury level. So we can see in this slide different way of implementing IPSAS. But our first research question was the following: what's the level of conformity? I will not use in my slide PwC index of conformity, 2004 updated in 2019, but according to this PwC index of conformity, Poland is the lowest one, 66, and United Kingdom, I think that is around now 95, 96%. So we have a quite high level of conformity, but as you can see, there are several deviations, important deviation from IPSAS, and I will go in detail of this deviation soon. And there are also several reasons why this country, they are deviating from IPSAS. I will discuss first of all the first issue. What are the deviation and why this country are deviating? What we have done in the paper with Tobias and Christoph, we created a sort of separation between partial adoption and adaptation. And in the partial adoption, we included non-adoption of standards. And we found that some countries in our selected countries, they are not non-adopting IPSAS number 10 on hyperinflationary economies. They are not adopting IPSAS 15 on investment property. Some countries, they are not adopting segment reporting. And some countries, that's very interesting, they are deviating by IPSAS 635 on consolidation. This is the case of Switzerland. We have 2 countries, Austria and Spain, where we have a sort of time lag of national implementation. And this is happening in these 2 countries. And after we have another long list of adaptation. Let me go in detail. We have 2 countries like Poland and Austria that they are adopting a sort of simplified version of IPSAS 1 and IPSAS 2. And you know that IPSAS 1 is related to the presentation of financial statement. IPSAS 2 is related to the cash flow statement. And Austria is implementing partially IPSAS 15. We have quite a lot of differences. And this is confirming the Janke Rutter's speech of this morning. We have quite a lot of adaptation in measurement principles, and some countries, they are still skeptical in using fair value. And this is the case of France, and this is the case of Sweden, and this is the case of Switzerland, for example, for capitalization of military equipment, for example. But we have also differences in consolidation method. And I am sure that these differences, they are not just related to these 9 countries. I don't know if you had a look to the Bergman paper in IRAS 2016. I was one of the co-authors. We made a survey in OECD countries, all OECD countries on consolidation, and we discovered a large variation of consolidation method adopted. And I think that these consolidation differences, they are quite strong in our 9 countries. For example, in Sweden, I can just provide you one example. They are not using the full consolidation, but they are using proportional consolidation for all state-owned enterprises and agencies. We have countries, and that's the third adaptation. We have countries like Switzerland that even if they totally move to accrual, they are still using cash for some tax items. And the last issue is alternative formats of presentation. This is again the case of Switzerland in relation to disclosure of employees' benefits. So these are more or less all the technicalities and deviation. That's the long list of deviation. The second topic, and this is a very long list, why countries, they are deviating. One topic is the issue that they are not issue covered in specific IPSAS, that they are not relevant for the countries. And we have a list of standards, as I told you, they are not relevant in Austria, Iceland, UK. Another set of answers, because we made interviews, IPSAS, they are offering several options, and we know that this, this can reduce comparability. That's again the issue of comparability between countries, very relevant, for example, for rating agency. IPSAS, that's the third reason. They were perceived as premature at the time of decision of adopting accrual accounting. And we know that UK is a country that introduced accrual accounting long time ago, also Sweden, and also France later on. So they didn't consider IPSAS at that time in the 80s, 90s, so mature like it is today, for example. And we have the problem of the competing standard. In the UK with IFRS, and several EU countries, they are discussing the Eurostat project of EPSAS. And there is also another competition here, because I think that Jan this morning was discussing about statistical issue, and we have the ECA 2010 European rules on statistical issue that they are affording reporting requirement for EU countries. And of course, several countries, they were discussing about cost-benefit analysis, and implementing IPSAS is very expensive, and so on. And the last issue is the accounting tradition. And I am sure that also in Brazil, you have a similar problem here, because prudence in continental countries, Austria, Switzerland, and France, let me say Napoleonic countries, it's stronger than fair value. So, and I see also this problem in Sweden, where I'm living. They are still under the so-called German influence of prudence. So let's go to the discussion and quickly to the conclusion. We have a lot of arguments, pro and cons standardization. Of course, we like comparability. I fully agree with Mayara, but there are a lot of obstacles to have comparability if you have a lot of options. More options, you have less comparable data. And we have seen a plethora of reasons to fully adapt global standard to the local need. And we know that there are coercive pressure for some countries, not for all countries. I can tell you for sure, for Iceland, because they had financial crisis, for Estonia, because they want to move in OECD country, and OECD told to Estonia, please adopt IPSAS. It was coercive. Mimetic, some countries, they are imitating other countries. I see this. This is very in Europe. But some countries, they are also imitating, not always good cases. They imitate also countries that they are reluctant, you know. We have seen the problem of dual moving target. We have two legislation that they have two different speeds. And I am sure that in Brazil, you have the same problem with the different speed of your standards legislation compared to IPSAS. And we found in Europe a lot of regulatory competition between public and private, between global and local standards. Plus, we have this Maastricht standard on statistical reporting. Some countries, they want to show the muscle, and they say, okay, we are France, we have a long tradition, and we don't want formally adopt IPSAS. We have our standards, and we want to keep our sort of independence. And this is one of the answers here. Of course, proliferation of standard is very good, because we have countries, they can have more option, but they create a lot of deviation, as we show in this paper, a lot of deviation. And this deviation, they are related to cultural issue, especially UK, Switzerland, with more than 40 years of experience of accrual accounting. But we have also countries that they don't have standard setting board. And this is the continental tradition. Also in Italy, Italy is not included in this country, but we introduced the standard setting board only, the national standard setter only a few years ago. So we are more law-based country. And this morning, I saw another question. And what's about the public sector accounting law? There was a question, I don't remember the person, to Bianca Reuters. This is still important, because they have a legalistic approach. Our conclusion is that IPSAS, they are very relevant, they are global standards, and they are not undermined with deviation. Of course, in our study, we have seen a lot of deviation, and we have seen a lot of explanation of deviation, but they are not avoidable, especially, and this is quite similar with IFRS. I know that several people, your university, they are studying more IFRS than IPSAS. It's like a new story of IFRS. Now some conclusion. first of all, empirical contribution. We have diverging accounting regulation despite IPSAS. You remember I started with standards from 14 to 15. It was our starting point. We have seen a lot of deviation from adopting IPSAS in the pure form, a lot of reasons to adapt standards to the local need. And this is in a way flexibility. Our conceptual, more conceptual contribution, standard setting process in a context of competitive regulation is generating dual moving targets. And of course, adopters in front of multiple standards, they have a choice to pick one that is more coherent with the national practices. And we refer in our paper several times to the concept of glocalization. In a way, EU countries, they are glocalizing IPSAS. And this is also clear that, you know, glocalization is not just happening in marketing, or is not just happening with McDonald's, that they are using Italian products like mozzarella and pomodoro when they sell hamburger in Italy. And I'm sure that they do the same in Brazil with your fantastic asado, for example. So glocalization is something related to marketing, but we are using this concept in accounting to explain this adaptation of the standard to the local taste. That's more or less our story. Why? Because national legislator or standard setter, they want to protect the national tradition, cultural tradition, and so on. Of course, we are aware about limitation of our study. We know that we have only a small sample. We would like to extend to further countries. Of course, we would like to do also in-depth case study and see how they are using the standard, because that's another limitation of our standard, our paper. We are just, we made a picture of the deviation, but we didn't discuss how they are using the standard. So it can be, I know that Tobias is doing a good case study about Austria with the one person of within the Ministry of Finance. And the last problem, our study is just related to 9 central government and is not dealing with local government. And we know that there is a huge variation at the local level. Let me say in Germany, for example, they are not adopting IPSAS, but there are some states that they are adopting and using IPSAS, for example. And the same in Italy, the same in France, and the same in Sweden, and so on. So I think that the local government perspective can be useful. And Anne was mentioning Klaus Luder and also Mayara in some email before. In 2002, we made one book. It's called Euro CIGAR book. And the book was edited by Rowan Jones and Klaus Luder and funded by PwC. And we have a picture of 15 EU countries. And the results of this book was that local government, they were more advanced than central government already 20 years ago. So what I'm just telling you, that this is an important limitation, that sometimes central government, they can learn by local government in terms of accounting innovation. And the last, but not least, we believe that it's important to study the role of individual actors, how they are promoting, introducing changes, and using different institutional streams institutional theory streams like institutional logics, institutional work, institutional entrepreneurship. And we have done one single case study on Estonia using institutional entrepreneurship. And the entrepreneurs was the standard setting body. Thank you for your attention. I think that it's okay from my side. Sorry if I was a little bit longer. I don't know. I'm not able to monitor the time. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's so fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will stop sharing. If you have any question, please, I am available. Thank you.
So many thanks to Professor Grossi. I think it was a very interesting presentation, looking at the comparison across a wide number of countries with the different characteristics. And I think in particular that the point at the end, and I can see that somebody has picked up on this in the chat, in this point in relation to local governments being more advanced than central government in terms of what they are achieving. I think we've also got this comment that it's very difficult for local governments to be adopting IPSAS if you are in a very small context. And I think this is something that again varies across different countries. I have to confess that I am not an expert at all on Brazil and municipalities, but I do know that there are certain European countries with similar characteristics. Italy and Spain, for example, have a lot of very, very small municipalities where it's just not appropriate. They're just not large enough to be implementing IPSAS. And I know that in the UK, we have exemptions for very small organisations in these situations. I'd like to invite people to ask questions now, either to Giuseppe for his presentation or to either of us if you have a question about the CIGAR network. As Patricia mentioned at the start, we're very happy to welcome questions in the chat. Obviously, I need them in English. I can read a bit of Portuguese, but I certainly can't speak it. We'd prefer them in English, but if you wish to put them in Portuguese, we will ask Patricia to help us out on the moderation on that front, or please raise a hand and we will ask you to present your question directly to either of us. I think we've got about 20 minutes for some questions now. So over to you for some questions or just comments and debate as you wish.
So I see that Mayara, she raised the hand. Please, Mayara.
Yes, please. Today in the morning, as you said, I asked Jan about the comparability. From Jan's answer today in the morning, I understood that we should be concerned at this time with the accrual accounting implementation and subsequently with the comparability. I found this point very curious, as comparability is said to be one of the main benefits of the process, and if we look at it only at the end, it may not actually be achieved. So after Jan's response to my question this morning, I was wondering if in-depth comparability should be pursued, as it seems like it will be impossible to make comparisons. Maybe we just need good information. I don't know, just was thinking and wondering about that. So should the comparability really be a concern, Oh, for what we need comparability, I was thinking about, so if you could just talk a little bit about it, it could be great.
Thank you, Mayara, for your question. I saw your question this morning. Unfortunately, I was not able to listen Jan answer at the end, but I will try to answer. The original title of this paper was Deviation from Ipsa's A Treat to Comparability, but we changed the title. But still, comparability is an important keyword in the paper. Based on my personal experience, I see comparability in 2 dimensions. One is inter-country comparability, and this is very important for rating agencies. But this is also important for international organizations like EU, because they still have a budget on cash basis, but they have the annual report on accrual basis. But the budget is on cash basis because EU member states, they don't have all accrual budget. Only 2 countries, they have accrual budget. This is UK, that now is not anymore in the EU, and Estonia. So I think that Mayara, one issue is inter-country comparability, and another issue is intra-country comparability, because Anna mentioned that Italy, for example, we have 8,000 municipalities. Some of them, they are very small, and not all of them, they have accrual accounting, only few of them, the largest municipalities. And also region, we have 20 regions. As I know, half of them, they have accrual, half of them, they are still on cash basis. So intra-country comparability is also an issue that can be investigated more, because the majority of the study are intra-country comparability. I think that within the country, it's even more important. And I am sure that in Brazil, you are a federal state, you have similar problem within a municipality and within the different states. I am not sure that they have all the same level of, let's say, maturity, accounting maturity, or not.
Very different.
So that's the problem. So I think that one important issue is the intra-country maturity, because in Europe, we are not United States of Europe. In the US, they have JSB and FASB. JSB, they are issuing standards for state and local government, and they have FASB, FASB, they are issuing standard for the federal government. And all the states and municipalities, they are using GSB. There are no differences. But in Europe, as you have seen from our story, we have huge differences in the accounting traditions. Please, Patricia, I see that you have a question.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's very important to understand how the information is used, how I need to compare. I think we know we don't have sufficient knowledge about the use of the information. Sometimes I think the aggregate level, it's not the most important. I think not in the level of the entities, but the level of what is the object, or that the managers decide about what. That's my question. I think we need to know more about how the managers decide. and then understand how what information we need to compare. But in my view, I think to implement accrual accounting is important to compare some information among different levels of government. I think it's my view. I think initially it's the IPSAS is now is switch the specificity of public sector account, and then I think you need to learn a lot about IPSAS yet, but for this we need to learn about the decision making process. I think it's my opinion. But I think my question is related to this discussion in relation to the cost-benefit analysis. The arguments seem to focus on cost. What is your opinion on that? Because sometimes it's costly and time consuming. But what in the side of the benefits, what we know about this? Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, for your question. As I told you, my expertise is more on Sweden, Estonia, and Poland. And I can provide you these three examples. In Sweden, they have more than 30 years of experience of accrual accounting in local government, regional government, national agency. They believe that they are already enough mature. They don't need to move formally to IPSAS because they have an index of maturity that is around 90, 95, like UK, 90, almost 95. Estonia, that's a very good example because they moved fast. It's a small country, and they wanted to invest in IPSAS because for them it's not just a cultural change, but is also a change. Is a symbolic change because they want to show that they are using a sort of well-recognized brand, IPSAS. And this is required by World Bank, European Union, and so on. But if I think about Poland, I see now Poland, this is quite big Central European country. They are still reluctant in the government, the Ministry of Finance, of should we move to accrual or not? They are still struggling, especially because for this lack of knowledge and diverging local resistance. So my answer is the following. In some cases, it's possible to introduce a change because public managers, they are ready to introduce these changes. In other cases, there are still some bureaucratic resistance to implement accrual and also IPSAS. And I am sure that in Brazil, you have also some resistance because I remember something from my visit to Brasilia at the Ministério da Fazenda. I remember some resistance. And going back to the question of your colleague here, Claudia Cruz, I see the small municipality, they don't have resources to invest. And I think that this is an important issue. Also in Italy, we have the limit of 5,000 inhabitants. Below 5,000, they don't have a sort of financial manager, and they are doing this in a larger scale. There are no economy of scale So this cost-benefit analysis, they are often related to the dimension of the organization.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Patricia and Giuseppe, for your response. Do we have any further questions, either for Giuseppe or more generally about the CIGAR network?
So, Anne, can I have a sort of invitation to
Of course.
the colleague, to everyone? I mean, I am really interested to receive in Journal of Public Budgeting, Accounting and Financial Management more submission from Brazil. In few days will appear in our journal in early site one paper about IPSAS implementation in emerging economies. And I invite you to read this paper. It was just accepted today, so it will appear in August. I really hope to receive by Brazilian scholar to our journal good submission, not just on IPSAS, but also on public sector auditing. We have a special issue connected to CIGAR of last year. It's still open, the special issue. We are interested in budgeting. Participatory budgeting was born in Porto Alegre long time ago. And you have some innovation in Brazil that they are exported. Now you are importing IPSAS, but you are exporting other important innovation. And as accounting scholar, okay, we are interested to IPSAS, but we should be interested also to other accounting innovation, I think. And I am sure that Anne, that she's a scholar more in management accounting, agree on this invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can share my slides, I obviously cited your journal in my CIGAR slides, and I'd also remind people that CIGAR has an annual issue with Public Money and Management. Public Money and Management does also have its own range of special issues, and I know that there have been some relevant particularly to emerging economies and to Brazil, but certainly the CIGAR network would welcome submissions about issues of interest to you in Brazil, which deserve a wider audience. So we are always hoping to receive interesting papers from wherever in the world. And one of the things that we're trying to do with the CIGAR network is indeed to make it a much more internationally known and recognized network. It always has been. I said when it was first established, it was a network with input from founding members in the United States as well as Europe. And in terms of our board membership, we have had wide membership in the past. We're perhaps too European at the moment, but we have just had a change in our board and at our recent conference, and we have now appointed people to our board who are more representative of our global reach. And certainly as a network, we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of global researchers, academics, practitioners, all of those with an interest in governmental accounting and public sector accounting more broadly. So we really do welcome your involvement in CIGAR, and we do give opportunities for publication. We're also interested if you want to do a short opinion piece. We're interested in those sorts of pieces for our quarterly newsletter. So if you don't think you're up to writing a journal paper for us, then we look for about pieces that are only about 500 words long for our quarterly newsletter. we normally we're trying to have some more diverse and topical pieces in each of our quarterly newsletters going forward. So please get in touch with us if that's something that would be of interest to you, so that we can discuss that further with you. Okay, still waiting to see if anybody else wants to contribute to the debate. So please raise your hand, put something in the chat, attract our attention in our last few minutes.
Yeah, you have only 3 minutes, and I would like to ask, how do you think it is possible to empower the research network in Latin America? For example, in my view, language is a problem, and sometimes the financing research is a problem too. And how do you think it's possible to? In my view, the pandemic has a advantage that it was possible to interact with the other research. For example, it's a good point of the pandemic. I'd like to hear about this.
Okay, so I mean, on your final point there, and I'll ask Giuseppe to come in as well if he wants to after I comment. I think the pandemic has changed everything, hasn't it? I think whilst many of us would like to go back to having face-to-face conferences, because one of the problems of a virtual conference is that you do miss out on all of that informal networking that takes place in and around the conference hall. So I do think we will return to face-to-face conferences, but I think we will have much more of a hybrid feel to them. And I would expect major conferences to probably have some sort of hybrid element going forward, because you were quite right. For a really good thing for the CIGAR network has been seeing a much greater range of international participants at our recent virtual conference, because people did not have to pay vast sums of money and lose a lot of time in traveling vast distances to get to the conference. And I think that if we are taking on board, and I think we do want to do this as a network, if we're taking on board the fact that we want to be there for particularly emerging economies, then we have to have some sort of virtual access, possibly not to all the parallel sessions in a conference, but certainly to some sessions. So, you know, one way would be to have hybrid plenary sessions, and then to have face-to-face streams and some virtual streams as well. I don't know how that would work out in practice, but certainly we should not go back to just being elitist in how we hold conferences going forward, because we want to learn from each other around the world, and we want to debate with each other around the world. And the only way to do that fairly and equitably is to have some sort of virtual encounter, isn't it? The language problem is obviously harder. My first degree is actually in Spanish and management studies, and so I am unusual in being a native British person who can actually understand better than most native English accounting academics how difficult it is to overcome that language barrier. I don't think there are easy answers to that. Obviously, English is, you know, the language that we all have to work in. I recognise I'm hugely privileged to be a native speaker, and I recognise that it's really difficult to learn to interact at a high level in another language. It's a huge amount of effort, and I recognize that. I don't have easy answers to that, because I don't think you can have things like dual streams divided by language, because that doesn't bring us together. I do think, though, that obviously with Zoom, there are more opportunities to make simultaneous translation easier, and I hope that helps you. I hope that my translation is good enough. I'm speaking well enough for you to get a decent translation and to understand me well. I don't know if Giuseppe wanted to come in and add anything to that. I've probably gone over time now because I talk too much.
And I fully agree with you with the digital part. And also I agree with you regarding English. You know, in the previous section, in this conference, there was one guy, his name is Yves Gendron, editor of CPA. Yeah. And he, just a few months ago, Patrícia, he launched a special issue in CPA in Italian language. And because he recognized that Italy is a great contributor of scholar in accounting. And there is a special issue nowadays still open in Italian language. And of course, after it will be translated in English. I think that we cannot forget our origin. We have, I mean, I feel very close to Brazil. I see Italian names. I see Sasso. I see several other Italian surname, Bettio, and we have a common origin. I think, and we should be not afraid about our origin. We have a long history in accounting, fantastic history in accounting. And I am very proud that Italian accounting was spreading all around the world, and also in the UK. We were influencing also UK in terms of accounting. That's impressive. And, and we should be proud of our origin. But I fully agree that young generation of scholars, Mayara, Fabricio, and so on, they should publish in top English accounting journal, and they will publish, they are publishing, and that's an important challenge. And it's very nice to have these bright people in Brazil, and we want to see these people in CIGAR, and we want to see these people in our European network. That's why we are here. It's 10 o'clock in the night for me, and I stopped my holidays few days in advance to be with you, and I feel very happy that I invested my free time to be with you. I am on holidays officially. I will start back in office in September, but I am in my office at the university just because I know Brazilian people, that you are putting a lot of passion, and there are a lot of fantastic scholars in Brazil. I am very happy to see you today, and good luck with everything. I am always available as CIGAR board member and also editor of journal of public budgeting, and also guest editor of other journal to receive contribution by Brazilian scholars. And I hope to visit physically São Paulo and the prestigious University of São Paulo, USP. You have a fantastic tradition in accounting, and you should be proud of your tradition. Thank you for guest us.
Thank you. We need to finish. Thank you for encouraging us, because I think normally I'm afraid about to expose, to present our ideas in other language. And thank you for encouraging us. On behalf of conference organized. I'd like to thank you, CIGAR members, Professor Giuseppe and Professor Anne, for sharing your knowledge with us. I very much hope that one day we will be able to host the CIGAR event in Brazil, and we work for this. Because the interaction with the CIGAR network is a fundamental opportunity to the development of our research. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Tchau, obrigada.